coach Julen Lopetegui, with Graham Potter poised to take over. Manchester United don't want to sell Kobbie Mainoo or Alejandro Garnacho, but it's understood that nobody in the squad is untouchable. Marcus Rashford's brother, who's his agent, has travelled to Italy to hold preliminary talks with AC Milan. Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. Dharmesh Sheth and Michael Bridge have the news lines this evening. Now, you will have already worked out that there's loads happening at Manchester United today. Well, there's more. We'll bring you news of an agreed deal with one of their most consistent performers this season. Well, with plenty of fans crying out for attacking reinforcements after a frustrating night in front of goal in the defeat by Newcastle last evening, we'll have the very latest from Arsenal. First, though, West Ham have sacked their head coach, Julen Lopetegui. Graham Potter is poised to replace him after West Ham held further positive talks with the former Chelsea and Brighton boss yesterday. Right, Dharmesh, obviously we'll talk Lopetegui sacking at 5:30 in the Sports Centre, but now, with our transfer head-on, how will his going affect West Ham's transfer business?
Well, I think because there was such uncertainty about Julen Lopetegui for a number of weeks, you remember a month ago there was a make or break game, they called it, against Wolves, which he got through, and then there was a 4-match unbeaten run. But it felt inevitable that at some point Julen Lopetegui was going to go. So we kind of predicted that the first few days, couple of weeks of this transfer window would be fully focused on what was going to happen with the manager as opposed to transfers. Now that Julen Lopetegui is gone, I think the attention will now turn to transfers. And of course, with a new manager coming in, there will no doubt have been discussions about what kind of players they want to bring in. But I think there'll be quite a few eyeballs on the sporting director, Tim Steidten. Julen Lopetegui was a unanimous choice amongst the board to take over as West Ham United manager. If you spoke to a number of West Ham United fans, they felt a little bit underwhelmed by the appointment. Now he's gone, it's going to be a real, a bit of pressure now, you'd think, on Tim Steidten. They spent over £100 million, which he was central to that recruitment. And by definition, because Julen Lopetegui is gone, you could almost call those first few weeks a bit of a failure. And what do they look like in the transfer window? So looking ahead to this transfer window, I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see the kind of deals that West Ham United do, and even more scrutiny, you'd have to say, on their sporting director, Tim Steidten.
Yeah, because in the summer, Michael, we said West Ham won the window, didn't we? They spent all that money. Does that mean Potter is going to get money to spend?
Well, I don't know if they'll be potless because of, there's money to spend, I'm sure, at West Ham, but more on that, I'm sure, over the next few weeks. But I think that we know Graham Potter's already spoken to West Ham United, and of course they're going to bring up players. But as Dharmesh has mentioned, in terms of their summer recruitment, Max Kilman came for a lot of money, Somerville came for a lot of money, Fulkrug, who's been injured for the majority of it, came for quite a bit of money as well. Wan-Bissaka, who, for me, I'm sure that's a very solid signing for West Ham United. But in terms of course, they're going to talk about recruitment as well. I think in terms of Lopetegui, it just didn't seem to be the right fit. And let's see if Potter's the right fit. And for Graham Potter as well, and I know we've talked about this throughout the afternoon on Sky Sports News, he needed to get back into football.
You did, indeed. All right, listen, we're going to talk much more about Lopetegui at 5:30 in the Sports Centre. But in the transfer show, I want to talk Manchester United now, Dharmesh. Right, people saying Kobbie Mainoo, Alejandro Garnacho could be up for sale at United. Surely not.
This is interesting, what's going on at Manchester United just now. What I can say is that Manchester United do not want to sell the two players on the screen just now in Kobbie Mainoo and Alejandro Garnacho, and they're not actively looking to sell. However, and I think this can be said for any football club and any squad, no player is untouchable, because everyone says, they're not for sale, but every player at the end of the day has a price. So with that in mind, if we just look at Mainoo himself, we're told that he's got no concerns over his contract. He's no concerns over his Manchester United future. He feels valued. He's actually got a contract that runs up until 2027 anyway. Manchester United have got the option to increase that contract by a further 12 months. And talks have actually taken place over a contract with improved terms, given his impressive performances.
Not agreed or anything, though, is it?
Not yet, but the lines of communication between Manchester United and Kobbie Mainoo's representatives remain open. As for that man over there, Alejandro Garnacho, his contract is running until 2028. One thing I should make clear, though, we always talk about PSR. June the 30th is that date that nobody wants to look at, but we do have to look at it. They don't want to be in a position, Manchester United, nor do any other club, come June the 30th, in that week leading up to it, we need to get rid of players. They want to have their books in order before July the 1st comes along so that they can really go for it in a summer transfer window. And as far as we're aware, Manchester United are confident of complying with profit and sustainability rules. But it is clear that some players will have to leave the club for that man there, Ruben Amorim, to bring new faces in. Homegrown players we do know, like Kobbie Mainoo, would represent pure profit. But as far as we understand, Manchester United have got no intention of letting players like that go.
Michael, he's brushing off this phrase, untouchable, or this word untouchable, but come on, if you're a United fan and no player in the squad is untouchable, you are going to be worried that you could lose a gem like that.
Yeah, I think, look, if you hear anyone, it's interesting to hear ex-Manchester United players, and I think they've all said, I heard Nicky Butt on the radio the other week saying Ruben Amorim needs maybe 2, 3, even 4 transfer windows. But look at it from maybe Ineos's point of view, how that would look from their perspective if they were to sell Kobbie Mainoo, who's, for me, look, there's been a lot of negativity near the end of the Eric Ten Hag era. Yes, OK, they won the FA Cup, but apart from that, it was all pretty negative. Apart from that man right there, and his performances earned him a place in the England World Cup squad, and he featured, the Euros, and he featured for England as well. It wouldn't be a good look, and it certainly wouldn't be a good look for Ineos.
Speaking of a good look, though, they've nailed a player down, or close to.
Yeah, this is great news for Manchester United. Ruben Amorim said last week that it was close, and what I'm talking about is a new contract for Amad Diallo. Now, we're told that an agreement has been reached and a formal announcement should be made very, very soon. It should be remembered here, Ahmed actually has entered the final 6 months of his contract, but United had an option to extend that contract for a further 12 months. They've chosen not to trigger that option, but instead engage in talks with Amad Diallo and his representatives over fresh terms to reflect the impressive performances that he has displayed.
So they want him, is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. So he's been widely regarded as one of the shining lights since Ruben Amorim has come into the club, and he's going to be rewarded for those impressive performances with a new contract, improved terms, and you'd have to say he probably deserves it.
Shining light since Amorim came into the club. I guess that's the polar opposite of how Marcus Rashford is viewed. Is he any closer to going?
Right. There's a few issues here that we need to specify. First of all, we heard earlier on this morning that Rashford's brother and his agent are out in Milan discussing a potential move to AC Milan, just to explore the conditions of a potential loan move. A number of clubs now are expected to approach Manchester United about a potential deal for Marcus Rashford. AC Milan, for their part, have made Rashford their primary target in this transfer window, but they only want to do a loan. Borussia Dortmund and Juventus are also interested. And in fact, the Borussia Dortmund head coach, Nuri Sahin, he was asked directly about the potential move for Marcus Rashford. This is what he had to say. Anything can happen. It's not as easy as in winter as it is in summer. We'd be prepared to do something, but we'll only do it if it makes us better. We're not going to get carried away. Since then, Sky Germany have actually said that it looks unlikely Rashford could go to Dortmund simply because the figures wouldn't work out for Borussia Dortmund. Such is the wage that Marcus Rashford is on. As for Manchester United, they're understood to be discussing internally what would be the best course of action with regard to Marcus Rashford in this transfer window. Do they allow him to go on a straight loan, or is there the prospect of maybe a loan with an option or maybe even an obligation as well, if indeed they allow him to leave? I think a permanent departure for Marcus Rashford will probably be reassessed in the summer transfer window, when hopefully by then, for Manchester United's sake, they will have a higher increased market value for the player. Because if you're going to go into the market for Marcus Rashford on a permanent deal right now, when it's clear he's not in the plans and he hasn't been featuring in squads, how much money are you actually going to get? Rashford himself wasn't training with the United squad earlier on today, but he was due to be training individually as he recovers from the illness that got him out of the squad for the game against Liverpool on Sunday.
Michael, Darmesh just said then that Rashford's brother, who's his agent, is in Milan to talk to AC Milan. Tell us why there's a link at Milan which might make this have a little twist.
Yeah, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who knows Marcus Rashford ever so well from the 2016-17 season they played together, and you can find quotes from Ibrahimovic back then saying just how much he regards, how highly regards Marcus Rashford, called him the future of England. Now, he's got an ambassadorial role at AC Milan, and look, seeing AC Milan at the moment, not doing too well in Serie A, but they've got the charismatic Sergio Conceição now as the head coach. They've just won the Italian Super Cup. I was watching them at the moment. I had a look at them last night about how good that would be for maybe Rashford to fit in there. So certainly one to keep an eye on, and very interesting that Ibrahimovic might have an influence there.
Yeah. Darmesh, if Rashford does go, do United bring someone in?
I think they would look to do just that. And it's our understanding that they've actually made inquiries to Paris Saint-Germain for their French international striker, Kolo Muani. Now, this is a player that United have actually had a long-standing interest in, because if you go back to the summer transfer window in 2023, Muani was extensively scouted by Manchester United. In the end, Manchester United decided to sign Rasmus Højlund from Atalanta. But it's clear that they admire the player. Now, at the time, they couldn't get him. We come to January 2025, and it appears that PSG look like they might want to do business. He's only started 2 Liga games all season. So you would think that he's not fitting in the plans there at PSG. And as far as PSG are concerned, they would prefer a permanent move for Muani in this transfer window. But as I've been saying throughout this transfer window, it's always very, very difficult to get big deals like this done. But they'd at least want, I think, the loan with the guarantee that that loan would turn into an obligation at some point.
Michael, if Manchester United want him, would they get a clear run at him?
No, I don't think so. I think Spurs like him as well. And Spurs, their primary objective now is to sign a forward. They've signed a goalkeeper, Anton Kinski. My understanding is they're looking at potentially a defender and a forward, but the preference is to go for a forward now. Heung-min Son obviously signed his new contract yesterday, but he hasn't played as many games. Timo Werner, it's been a tough season for him, let's be honest. Richarlison is still out injured. He might be on the bench tonight. I doubt it. He'll probably be back next week against Arsenal. So, yes, there's interest there that scouts all look at the same player. That's the nature of football now at top level. Everyone's aware of him, and Spurs want to be kept aware of him as well.
I want to talk Chelsea with you. Big squad, of course. Are they going to trim it? And is Christopher Nkunku one of those who could go?
This is really interesting because you look at the players now of the era now of the current Chelsea, and we've spoken about how Chelsea operate in terms of transfers, contracts, and we know that Chelsea don't like to now pay big wages, but they like long contracts. Of course, there was talk about Nkunku potentially moving on. Nothing's really accelerated on that just yet. But what does interest me, if he was to leave, if these players are now on long contracts, what will Chelsea have to pay out? We saw Cole Palmer on a really long contract. I mean, he's probably been one of Chelsea's best signings in years. Not on the highest of wage, but on a long contract. Yeah. So it'd be interesting how it pans out with players Enzo Maresca's not massively keen on when they've got long contracts. But I must say, I must give credit to Enzo Maresca, because he said to us throughout the summer, last summer, we always kept talking to him, didn't we, at press conferences, you got 35 players, you got 35. Yeah. And he always said, not me, I want to work with 23, 24. And to be fair to him, he stuck to that. But Nkunku's done ever so well in Europe, so we'll wait and see on this one.
Yeah, 6 years he signed for, got 4.5 years left. He'll want to be shown his money. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Michael's going to tell us what Crystal Palace's stance is on their skipper, Mark Guehi. And after last night, do Arsenal need a striker? What are they going to do about it? We'll discuss that next. See you in a moment. Hello again. This is the transfer show. We're going to talk Mark Guehi now and Chelsea's interest in him. We know Chelsea want him. Michael, you know Crystal Palace well. What's their stance on Chelsea's approach if it happens?
I don't think they'd massively welcome it because it's, they're halfway through the season. Things have picked up a little bit under Oliver Glasner. But look, when he joined Crystal Palace from Chelsea, my understanding was that Chelsea had the opportunity to match any offer that Crystal Palace received. Now, throughout the summer, we told you, was it 4 bids from Newcastle United? I think the key from that was that Palace were obviously open to speak to Newcastle United. But my understanding was that Mark Guehi was never overly keen to leave the football club. I mean, Newcastle would have been obviously a great move for him, but he wasn't agitated. He wasn't asking to leave the football club. He's the captain at the end of the day. Now, what I find interesting, what we're going to see over the next few weeks is, of course, Guehi's value will probably go down now because, of course, his contract's running down. But Crystal Palace are only 4 points clear of the bottom 3. So do Crystal Palace look at it and say, look, whatever happens, he has to stay this season. He's a key player. So it's an interesting one. It'd be interesting to see how this pans out. I mean, we're just at the very start.
Could Chelsea play hardball because of Trevor Chalobah?
Well, I think the clubs have got a good relationship. I think if Chelsea phoned up Crystal Palace and say, look, we want a defender, they say, yeah, go on, have Trevor Chalobah back.
Go on, Dummy.
That's what I would suggest. That's what I would assume. I don't think they'd want to lose their... Who wants to lose their captain midway through a season?
Now, I think Michael makes a good point there, particularly because of Crystal Palace's position. Now, some clubs who are looking over their shoulder with regard to relegation will look at a player like Mark Guehi. Let's look at Crystal Palace as that example. They're going to have a better chance of staying in the Premier League if their captain and best defender, arguably, is with the squad. They already lost Joachim Andersen to Fulham over the summer. Can they afford to lose someone like Mark Guehi? He's only got 18 months left on his contract, admittedly, and Michael said it there that the actual asking price would probably go down the further down you go in that contract. But if he helps them stay in the Premier League, how much money do you get for staying in the Premier League, and how much would that offset any loss in a transfer fee? So it'd be very, very difficult decision for Crystal Palace to actually allow him to go in the middle of a season, particularly given the position they're in.
Absolutely. Now, if you turned your radio on last night, you'd have heard Arsenal fans fuming about what happened. They're crying out for attacking options. Darmesh, can you give them any hope?
It's so difficult because generally it's not just to do with Arsenal. Generally, as I've mentioned here before, January is a really problematic window to get big deals done. A club like Arsenal, if they go into the market, they will want to bring in someone who's going to improve their squad and improve their team. Now, these players are usually at successful clubs playing very successful football. So why would a club who has that player in the middle of a season decide, yes, you can have our player for however much money? But the thing is with Arsenal as well, and particularly in January, the prices are distorted as well because it becomes a reactive window. Other clubs can smell a little bit of desperation if a club goes in for a player in the middle of a transfer window.
Arsenal?
Well, like I said before as well, every single club, and I include Arsenal in this, when they finish a season, they don't look at January and think, let's go massive in January. They are looking 1, 2, 3 summer windows ahead. They are recruiting into the future. January is always looked at as a window. If there's an opportunity to do something and we need to react, yes, and some people will say they do need to react. Yeah. Saka's injured. Nwaneri's injured at the moment as well.
Sterling's injured.
Exactly, but it's so difficult to be able to do a deal in that window. And if Arsenal find an opportunity for a long-term target or a short-term option that they can't refuse, then maybe they want to be in a position where they can act. They've done it before with Leandro Trossard. He's been very successful. Let's see if they can do it again in this window.
They're not the only ones who might be looking for someone up front. Manchester City looking at Omar Marmoush. Do we know if this is close, if it's going to happen?
Well, I mean, we love reporting on transfers, but there's nothing like getting a quote from the football club itself. And this is from the Eintracht Frankfurt chief executive, Marcus Kroos. He said there's been no contact, no call, nothing. But we know Manchester City are looking for a forward. I mean, an injury to Erling Haaland is absolutely unthinkable. We also know they're keen on adding a centre-half. Lens centre-back Abdulkadir Kushinov has been mentioned. The difficulty, Mike, in a lot of European Premier League transfers this January, I don't think it's been mentioned a lot. is the Europa League and the Champions League is back in January. Everyone seems to be enjoying it, but it's more games, and we've never had European football in January. Frankfurt are in the Europa League and they're 5th. So we need to remember that with clubs as well in Europe.
And going really well in the Bundesliga as well. Yeah. No one's talking about Man City and midfield, but they surely have got to do something, get some legs in midfield and get a holding midfielder as well. All very quiet there. We'll keep an eye on that. Right, Michael, we spoke about Crystal Palace. I want to go back to them. Potential incoming. You have some news.
Yeah, they've approached Millwall over the signing of Romain. Esse. He's a central midfielder, very, very highly regarded, loved at Millwall, actually, but there's a number of clubs interested in him as well. That at Palace, a club, and many clubs look at signing players now because they know there's going to be real interest in certain players in the summer, and Esse fits that as well. He's only 19 years of age, but as I say, he's very highly regarded, well thought of in the England setup as well, but he does have a release clause in his contract, so Millwall just don't want to lose him at the moment. Right,
all week we've been debating whether Ange Postecoglou is going to throw in his new keeper, Michael Kinski. What do you think?
I think he probably will. He had a good training session yesterday, sounds pretty fearless, he wants to. He speaks really good English, and I know people say, well, what's that got to do with it? It's got a lot to do with it, because he's already speaking and conversing with his defenders. We'll wait and see. I'm going to go for yes.
Massive gamble, Darmesh?
I mean, that's where Tottenham are at the moment, aren't they? So they've lost their first-choice goalkeeper for a considerable length of time. Fraser Forster has come in. Hasn't quite worked out for him. He's made a few high-profile mistakes and he's been ill, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so Brandon Austin made his debut, 25, and he's been at Spurs since he was a kid. So we'll wait and see. I think he'll make his debut tonight.
I guess if you get someone in short term, you might as well play him.
Well, I actually think he could be Tottenham's #1 next season, Kinski.
Heard it here first. Michael Bridge, you heard it. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Darmesh and Michael are back in the 7 o'clock hour for an extended transfer show. I'm back after the break, and we're going to talk Julen Lopetegui, who is now unemployed. See you in a moment.